Hello, welcome. Thanks for joining us on another edition of Sports Now with Viren Ferrao. Today we're going to talk about that moment at Arthur Ashe when Sumit Nagal stepped onto the court and had the entire world of tennis talking about him at the US Open. Now, even if Sumit Nagal got overawed by the occasion, well, it's just that kind of thing, because in the lead up to this match against Roger Federer, when he found out that the draw placed him in a dream match against Roger Federer, you know what Sumit Nagal said? He said it's like playing against God. That's what Sumit Nagal thought of Roger Federer, and I'm sure there are a lot of tennis fans across the world, also in India, who think quite the same. Now, Roger Federer is no mug on the court, 20 Grand Slam titles to his name, and easily one of the greatest players to have ever played the game of tennis. But it was an epic clash at Arthur Ashe, as Sumit showed real glimpses of brilliance. In fact, he caught Roger Federer cold in the opening set, having beaten him in the first set to win it 6-4. Of course, then normal service resumed for Roger Federer, but what a moment it was for Sumit Nagal. Taking a set of Roger Federer is an achievement in itself. Now, if you consider the fact that Roger Federer doesn't drop too many sets in the opening rounds of most Grand Slams, that tells you a whole lot about how good Sumit Nagal actually was and how much of a surprise he was to Roger Federer. Now, if you look at the players, Indian, who've played against Roger Federer in the past, Sumit Nagal has played him twice, once at the second round of the Roland Garros, that's the French Open, but things didn't go necessarily according to plan for Sumit. He lost there in straight sets to the Swiss maestro. So this achievement of Sumit Nagal not to be taken lightly at all. So India has a rich history in doubles at Grand Slams or other tour events. Now, if you look at the brightest and best doubles players to have played for India, you've got Leander Paes, you've got Mahesh Bhupathi, Rohan Bopanna, and not forgetting Indian tennis queen Sania Mirza. Now, these four players have dominated the scene of doubles at different periods over the last 20-25 years. But as far as singles is concerned, we haven't necessarily had the same luck. There have been just 5 Indian players who made it to the main draw of a Grand Slam. And those are men I'm talking about. And the struggle has been consistent for the Indian team. Now, those 5 include Sumit Nagal, who just lost to Roger Federer. There's Rajesh Gurung, who also lost in the first round to Daniil Medvedev in the first round of the US Open. If you go back a few years, you've got Saket Maineni, Somdev Devvarman, and Yuki Bhamri. Well, those are the only 5 players who've been there in the last 10 years. Tells you the story of how Indian singles has struggled at major events, including at the Grand Slams. Perhaps the last stride that's needed to compete at these global events is somewhere that we're falling short. Now, the memory of Sumit Nagal actually competing against Roger Federer may be fresh in your minds. Now, if you go back a few years, some of you might remember Leander Paes, Mahesh Bhupathi, Rohan Bopanna, and Sania Mirza doing the business on the tour for India. But if you go back a few more years, a few more decades actually, you remember Ramanathan Krishnan. Back in 1960 and 61, he reached the semi-final of 2 Grand Slam. He is the only Indian to actually achieve that feat. A few years later was Vijay Amritraj. Famous as a commentator now, Vijay Amritraj in 1973 managed to reach 2 quarterfinals of Grand Slams. And that's the legacy of Indian tennis. You've had some very good singles players in the past, perhaps not so in the recent past. Leander Paes, remember, famously won Olympic bronze in 1992, but there haven't been players of that sort of caliber and that sort of consistency in recent years. But with Sumit Nagal's performance against Federer, we hope that that changes. Well, it's now up to Sumit to prove that this wasn't just a flash in the pan for him, and that he belongs at the biggest stage of them all, at the Grand Slams of world tennis. He's got to put in the hard yards, but he's shown that he's got the talent to do it at the US Open in his match against Federer. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Sports Now with Viren Ferrao. Make sure you follow Viren Now on Facebook, and you can follow me on Facebook and on Twitter. Thanks for watching.